I found everything. So there's nothing for me to go back to. But
You ate
Zelda
your dessert too fast.
I know, I really did. I really did. But Zelda still has so much stuff in it.
Yeah,
and it's really cool to just pop that open and just have that wonder every time.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you guys have looked into like what this DLC is, but like it's really meaty. It takes you all over the map, and I think they purposely sent you to places that maybe a lot of people hadn't visited. So like just by going to check out these new quests, I'm like, oh, there's another shrine here that I never found. So that's been really cool too.
Is it just kind of more the same? Is it just sort of like new shrines?
Well, it's new shrines, and then there's like quests to find the shrines, and then you refight all the bosses basically. And they're like harder versions of the bosses.
There's some light story stuff, like they get into some new cutscenes and stuff like that. A
Like,
lot of the
they're
people
like flashbacks to what happens.
Yeah. A lot of the people that went into this expecting like, you know, master mode or something like Breath of the Wild 2 or something. The way like when you typed in Zelda as your name in the original game, you got a whole sequel that was rearranged. They're kind of disappointed they didn't really get a ton of like backstory kind of stuff like that. But what's there is cool. It's just not, you know.
Well, I think there's a lot there too.
Right. There is.
I've been playing it for a week now, and I've only beaten 2 of the bosses. It's really fun.
I got through it like the first week that it came out, and I didn't collect all the side masks and all the other things, but I went through the main part of the DLC. Yeah. And I will say that getting through that first part of it is really tough, but you're probably already through there. And then the other shrines that you have to collect, and then that final part of it. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't played it already, but I think it's great. I really love that Nintendo was able to add even more content to the game. It
wasn't big enough already.
It's a little weak that it's not as like directly story related. It's sort of like a precursor to what happened in Breath of the Wild, but I still really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great way to supposedly finish off all the content coming to the game. So yeah, very cool. What have you been playing, Brian?
Well, speaking of Zelda, I'm playing my second favorite Zelda game on Switch, which is Blossom Tales.
Nice.
A game which it sort of like doesn't even pretend that it's hiding the fact that it's just completely celebrating A Link to the Past. Like this is the ultimate video game nod to A Link to the Past that isn't actually A Link Between Worlds or a sequel or anything like that. Like, so when I first started playing this game, I was like, oh, it's kind of, you know, old school Final Fantasy-ish. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, like, this is A Link to the Past.
Oh, man.
The floors fall apart. There's dungeons. There is a boomerang, and there are spin attacks, and the whole game stars a female, which is really cool because like every Zelda game I've ever played is just about Link. But these dungeons are really smart. They're really clever. They're all like themed around different environmental puzzles and bosses and stuff like that. There's shops. There's heart containers. This is Zelda. This is straight up 2D Zelda. So if you played Breath of the Wild and you're like, this game was kind of missing the dungeons, it was missing a lot of the stuff that like the charm that I love from the 2D games, please check this game out. I will say that the icon for the game is hideous. It's bad. Like it looks like some like generic like DeviantArt anime.
They're definitely not trying to clickbait you.
Yeah. Like it's the opposite of clickbait. Like don't judge a book by its eShop cover, I guess.
Don't judge this game.
But the game rules. It's like $15. It's totally awesome. I played it for like 6 hours straight on a cross country flight, and I'm still playing it now and trying to 100% it. So yeah,
I love it. I love it too, but I feel like it's brutally hard sometimes.
It gets a little difficult.
Yeah. Like, and some of the bosses, like some of the sub bosses in the dungeons, are a lot easier for me to get through, or harder, I'm sorry, to get through than the actual bosses themselves.
Yep.
So I don't know. But other than that, I love the game itself. The game is really fun, and it does a perfect job, like giving a callback to games like Link to the Past and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really weird to sort of tread that and not be like, oh, we're totally ripping you off. We're celebrating. That is a very tough line to walk. And I think they teeter over each side here and there, but it works. It totally works. So check it out.
Are you finding the same sorts of items that you find in Zelda that give you access to?
Yep, straight up. Okay. Straight up. Nice.
Yep. What about you, Max? What have you been up to this week?
So I used the winter break as a good chance to kind of catch up on a lot of stuff on Switch I'd been putting off. I finally beat Odyssey, which was wonderful.
Nice.
I got to do that like totally cliche, like, oh, I'm going to have my niece play Odyssey, and I got to watch a 5-year-old girl like power through like the whole first, hat world or whatever. And then I was like, you know what? I should really, confession, I haven't finished Breath of the Wild. I keep going up against Thunderblight Ganon and just getting incredibly frustrated and then walking away and then coming back and being like, oh man, I forgot how to play this.
Yeah, there's a high learning curve coming back to it.
Yeah, and somebody ate all my stew, so I don't know. Like, I don't have any help. I got to go cook and stuff. But yeah, no, I also play this game called Gorogoa, which I love. It's on Steam and iOS too, and it's this wonderful, incredibly like totally hand-drawn puzzle game. It's made by one dude. He spent 7 years making it.
Oh my God.
And it's finally out, and he decided to drop it a week before Christmas when everyone is away. And
Yeah, it was on like the 21st, right?
It was ridiculous, yeah. But I think it's like $15, and it's just beautiful. You can kind of play through it pretty quickly. It's not a very long game, but it's one of my favorite things in games. It feels like just a very high concept pop-up book. Very trippy. You kind of you have these different sort of images. There's always sort of like 4 tiles on the screen, and there are these beautiful like illustrated things, and occasionally they'll sort of animate. But it'll be things where you tap on an item and it like zooms in, and so it'll be like a picture on the back.
On this game, I had a blast playing it over the break with my sister,
cool,
and some friends too. But yeah, the online, it's a little shaky right now, but I do know that the developers are planning on releasing a patch very soon that's supposed to fix a lot of the frame stutters and the online stuff. But if you're not aware about this game, it's a little, as you can see just by watching some of the footage, it looks a lot like the Smash Brothers series, and that's really a good
back into Japanese popularity.
Right.
I think what's really crazy about having a handheld that's kind of released like that, you mentioned that earlier in the year, is that you see somebody with like this device with neon controllers, and you're like, what is that?
Yeah.
What are you playing on the airplane? Or
There's a Yoshi game coming, an as yet untitled Yoshi game. They announced Metroid Prime 4, but that was just a logo at E3.
Yeah,
Who knows how near that is?
3 is
Bayonetta 3. There's a new Pokemon game coming for Switch, but they had nothing to show for that last year. So yeah, I have no idea what are their big guns for 2018.
I mean, we keep waiting for them to kind of update the whole like firmware and home screen and everything, and maybe be like, hey, here's a browser, here's Netflix, here's all the kind of the basic stuff that they held off on. I was sort of expecting that stuff to pop up, in the fall, but it didn't. So I mean, I'm not complaining. I watch Netflix on like everything else in my house. I'm not really pushing for it, but I'm sure there are people out there who are like, oh hey, like a portable movie device.
Yeah.
It's a stupid little thing, but I mean, the Switch is so much about customization with the Joy-Cons, and all of that is kind of missing in the OS, whereas the 3DS had themes, which were really cool because you could pop on to My Nintendo or jump on the eShop and spend $1 or $2 and get basically a reskin theme on your 3DS that played different noises, or it was Zelda themed or whatever it was. We have nothing like that now. We have like white or black, it's like, or inverted colors, which is like, that's it. So I hope we get to see something like that. Those are little things, right? Little bells and whistles. But in terms of games, I want Animal Crossing. That's the one. That is the big one. That is like the big thing that I think will sell a metric ton.